Hi, I'm Hazel, and today we are taking a look at the Shadow Priest changes on the Shadowlands Alpha. I would classify myself as a medium casual Shadow Priest. I've been raiding on this class at the heroic level since Warlords of Draenor, but I am not a mythic raider nor a theory crafter myself. This is going to be more of an every priest's perspective. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what the Shadow Priest changes are and then give my opinions on them. The first major change is Shadow Word Death is no longer a talent, and is instead returning as a baseline spell for all priest specializations. On top of that, we are also seeing some pretty major changes to the spell itself, so let's compare the before and after. This is the current BFA version of Shadow Word Death. It is a talent, it requires 20% health in order to use it, it's a decent sized hit, it has 2 charges, and it generates insanity, with double granted if the target dies. And then this is the new version of Shadow Word Death that's currently on the Shadowlands Alpha. So as we said, not a talent, you will get this without having to spec into it. Now the damage is much less, it does less damage than your Shadow Word Void. It has no charges, it has a slightly longer cooldown, and if it is not a killing blow, you will take the damage that the Shadow Word Death did. Also very notable, there is no health requirement. The mob does not need to be 20% health. You can use this at the beginning of the fight and as often as you want, within the cooldown. All day long, all day, and just keep pinging yourself with damage. So I personally am not thrilled with this. I appreciate it becoming baseline and trying to work it back into our lives. However, I have a couple of specific issues. My first problem is that with no minimum health requirement, your best move here is just to press it on cooldown, all fight, and just keep taking that pinging damage, and your healers will hate you, and that's just too bad. And then the second problem that I have is that I think that requiring a killing blow for the health refund is too punishing, especially when it's such a teeny tiny little hit. Requiring killing blows is already kind of iffy because other people could kill the mob, and also we're a dot class, so maybe your dots will do it, but because it's such a minuscule hit, the amount of effort it takes to precisely time a killing blow is absolutely not worth it to avoid taking a similarly dinky amount of damage to yourself. It may as well not offer that, it's just wasting space on the tooltip right now. You are almost never going to get that refund, and as I said before, even when you do, it's kind of a dinky amount of health anyways, and sure, that means it's less annoying to your healers, but you're doing this all fight over and over again. If I was to make some changes to present solutions to my problems, my first change would be to make it a bigger hit of damage on a longer cooldown if need be. This makes it easier to kill a mob with it and also makes it more punishing if you mess it up, and also makes it a more fun button to press. I would also like to see a system that gives a 3 to 5 second window for the mob to die after you use Shadow Word Death before it decides that you failed. There's many abilities that work like this now, they just require the mob to die shortly after you use it as opposed to requiring a killing blow, and that makes so much more sense in today's environment. I would also personally, and I know not everybody's going to agree with this, but I would have it require 20% health again. It's an execute, and I would like it to feel like an execute, which to me means making it a bigger hit that you can only use when the mob is low health. And that would also encourage you to time it correctly so that you don't take the damage back to yourself. And of course, if it's a bigger hit, it's going to be more damage, and you are hopefully more motivated to avoid it. I mean, it's Shadow Word Death, not Shadow Word Mild Inconvenience. One possible issue I see with my solutions is that the death window for the damage refund could be used on purpose in PvP situations in order to break CC. Like if you know you have a couple of seconds before it's going to ping that damage back to you, then you can use that on purpose to break polymorphs. In my mind, those things are not such a big deal if A, it's such a big hit of damage back at you that you're not going to do that on purpose in PvP, and B, if it once again requires execute range, that makes it much less of an all-the-time problem. On top of that, people are already going to use it in that way, since even though it's an instant reflect, nothing's really instant in a game that has latency, and therefore people will still be able to break their own CC, so you may as well formalize it a little bit and not make it a mechanic that relies on you to have a certain amount of ping. That brings us to our next major change, which is this brand new talent called Death and Madness. This slots right into that old Shadow Word Death spot on the tree, competing with Auspicious Spirits and Shadow Crash. Death and Madness gives you a 6-second window after Shadow Word Death is cast in order to kill the mob. If the mob dies, you're going to get some insanity over 4 seconds and then a reduced Shadow Word Death cooldown. So this is really neat, but just to my petty little brain makes it even more irritating that the health refund on original Shadow Word Death requires a killing blow, since they clearly know that the window is more effective. As far as talents go, this is potentially takeable on fights that have many small health adds, particularly staggered ones though, so I think this at least will be hopefully usable in some situations. I'm happy to have the prospect of some choice in my talent setup. Usually, at least for BFA, my rating talents were so static that I set them once and didn't adjust them for months, if not years. It'll be nice to have a little variety. The next big change to Shadow Priest in Shadowlands is the adjustment to Surrender to Madness. So Surrender to Madness is a talent on the bottom talent row, and it is still a talent on the bottom talent row. It is not becoming baseline, it is still a talent, still in its old spot. Here is the before version. It's a 3-minute cooldown that gives you 100% insanity gen, you get to cast while moving for 1 minute, and then you'll take a big hit of 90% of your health worth of damage. Reading this tooltip honestly was news to me because you never take this in BFA, you live your whole life in Legacy of the Void or maybe Dark Ascension. In the Surrender to Madness that I remember, like the original version, it used to last for the duration of Void form, and then when you left Void form you died, and that one was on a 10-minute cooldown. It was understandably way too powerful in the hands of experienced raiders, but it was so fun. So that is the Surrender to Madness of old. This is the new version. It's on a 2-minute cooldown. You're going to cast it at a target and it starts a new Void form. You have 25 seconds of 100% insanity gen and casting while moving, and if the target that you popped it on does not die within that 25-second window, then you are going to die. If the target that you popped it on does die, your buff goes away and you move on with your day. So this, in my opinion, is quite dumb. The 25-second cap absolutely kills it for me. The whole value of 100% insanity gen is the possibility to reach a crazy long Void form. Nobody is leaving Void form within 25 seconds anyway, so the only thing this really gives you is casting while moving, and that is absolutely not worth not taking Legacy of the Void. You're walking away from 5% spell damage and a faster Void Eruption cast time and a lower Void Eruption threshold. It's madness. It's Surrender to Madness, except it sucks. This is basically a non-pick, except in like the most incredibly niche situation you can possibly think of. The low cooldown means that I guess potentially if you have large health mobs every 2 minutes that take almost exactly 25 seconds to kill, then maybe, but ooh. In my opinion, the thing that needs to happen to Surrender to Madness is it needs to last until you leave Void form. Right now, as it is on Alpha, I don't know if this is intended, but it doesn't even last the whole 25 seconds. The buff disappears the second the mob dies. That's just gross. If Surrender to Madness lasts until you leave Void form, then it's once again going to reward that really skilled gameplay of staying in Void form. Tune what you have to get it to that point. I don't mind if it's a longer cooldown. I don't even super mind if it's less insanity gen bonus. Maybe instead of 100%, it could be less than that. Whatever you have to do to make it not stupid broken, but also not... Like, the current version is so unpickable that it begs the question of why they changed it, because, you know, in BFA, Surrender to Madness is a talent that you don't take, and if nothing changes, in Shadowlands, Surrender to Madness is going to be a talent that you don't take, so hopefully something gets done here. With that rand out of the way, that brings us to our next major change, which is Void Bolt Rank 2. This is a new passive spell that you'll be able to unlock at level 56, which means it's not testable right now on Alpha, but it will allow you to cast Void Bolt while your Mind Flay is channeling. It's pretty self-explanatory. However, that really small change is going to shake things up pretty significantly, or at least that's the way it seems to me. We'll tell when we have access to it, but this is pretty big. The downside to this change is that stutter stepping, which is the only way Shadow Priests get anywhere unless they want to stop doing damage and just run like a chump, stutter stepping feels much worse since you could do more damage if you could just stand still. Shadow Priest is already an incredibly immobile caster class, and right now, the best time for you to move, which you kind of have to do now and then, is while you're either A, casting your Shadow Word Pain, which is maybe at the beginning of the fight, or I guess an ad phase, or B, the thing that actually happens is during the Void Bolt Global whenever you're in Void form. With this change, the best time for you to move is going to be almost never, so you just have to suck it up and lose damage whenever you have to move, which is, you know, sometimes. I am officially requesting a Roomba that can cart me around so that I can keep Mind Flaying all the time. I suppose this kind of values up that Surrender to Madness a little bit because that casting while moving is a little nicer, but still, I don't know. Other Shadow Priest changes include additional Unpruning, couple more things coming back. Desperate Prayer is now baseline, Mind Soothe is now baseline, Empowered Mass Dispel is now baseline, that lets you mass dispel bigger things, typically in PvP that used to mean Paladin bubbles as well as cyclones. That unlocks at level 54. We are also getting Power Infusion baseline unlocked at level 58. So the star picks for me from that list are Desperate Prayer. I wasn't super jazzed about this when I first saw it, but it is surprisingly nice to have on hand. I don't know if you guys remember what it feels like leveling as a priest. If you've been playing all BFA, you might have forgotten, but it hurts. And I've been using Desperate Prayer way more than I anticipated, so that's a nice button. Power Infusion is not available yet on Alpha. We can't level to the point of unlocking it, but I am deeply excited about that. Shadow Priest, in my opinion, often feels as though it lacks cooldowns. You know, people say, oh, save your 2 minutes, save your 3 minutes, now's a good time to use them, and I'm just looking at my bars being like, well, I guess I have an Azurite Essence and I won't have that in Shadowlands. So Power Infusion should really help. One important thing to note about Power Infusion is that you can cast it on allies. In a high-end raid environment, this may mean that you are obligated to use that on other people for the good of the group, which can be kind of icky. However, I think it's kind of fun. Most situations that I, as like a medium priest, will find myself in are most likely gonna let me keep it. And then if I feel like sharing, I get to be all magnanimous and obnoxious about it, and I'm looking forward to that. Aside from that, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't remember what Mind Soothe was. I know I had it at one point in my life, but I clearly never used it because I had blocked it from my memory. It is an instant cast ability that you can use on humanoids or dragonkins that reduces their aggro radius. It's like the saddest version of stealth ever. I don't mean that to shade it. It is better than nothing. It's a neat thing to come back. Maybe this is what Shadow Priest needs in order to not die while leveling, so, you know, don't knock it before you tried it, but you are getting that back. Another thing in Shadowlands that's going to make a big difference to your combat life are the Covenant abilities. On the Alpha right now, Boon of the Ascended is currently available for testing. That is the Kyrian ability. That one looks like this. It makes you do this kind of fast, spammy AoE situation that has an explosion at the end and also transforms your Mind Flay. It's kind of a lot. It's kind of overwhelming, especially because you can't really sit down and read all the little bits of it until you've already popped it and then it's on a timer. But basically lots of white flashy stuff and spamming and AoE. I am personally reserving judgment on the Covenant abilities until A, we've tested all of them, and B, the theory crafters have had a look. I will probably just take the really cool, kind of angsty, gothic, prideful vampire dudes regardless of the abilities because they just look really cool, so fight me. Let's see, other things you should know about. Really tiny kind of random one, but you do seem to fall faster when you levitate jump off of stuff, so be aware of that. And overall thoughts, I think that from right now on Alpha, Shadow Priest feels almost exactly like it does on Live, just without your essences and your corruptions. You have Shadow or Death, but it's kind of inconsequential. You could pick Surrender to Madness, but it's unpickable. If you like Shadow Priest and BFA, you will probably be on board for Shadowlands, but if you were hoping for big changes, at this time, this probably isn't it. I sincerely hope that more changes are made to Shadow or Death and Surrender to Madness in particular. I am just one person though, and this is all my opinion, so I would love to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.